we got notice that our brother-in-law had been shot and killed in Mexico. And
Mm.
so we made our way back home and had to fellowship and really kind of do some deep soul searching back home. And when we came back, it was such a heavy thing on us. And I think as a household, and I know her as an individual, trying to understand how to process loss, also process grief, and then her specifically, being able to do that from so far away from home, away from family, away from friends, right?
Mm.
And we had already kind of been doing some movement work around the Day of the Dead holiday, which is solely focused on celebrating the lives of the loved ones who have passed on.
Hello, everyone. I am your host, Lion, and I believe that when you find yourself in a deep funk in your life, you alone possess the answers within to unlock your road to recovery. And you alone possess the power and determination to do the hard work to commence the journey of digging yourself out of the darkness. The loved ones that you choose to surround yourself with can be an integral piece of the puzzle, helping you determine progress and reflect the hard work you are doing within yourself. Our guest, Kyle Mims, is such a relatable example of a family man who did the hard work of enduring the process. Please come join me as we learn from Kyle's path to wisdom. Mr. Kyle Mims was born and bred in DC and a mama's boy. He was a nomad during his elementary school career until he finally settled down, which I presume was during middle school onwards. And also a budding carpenter and tinkerer in his grandfather's shed during the summer, which would later lead to his inspiration when the prodigal son left DC to study architecture in Philadelphia, which has amazing architecture. But soon realized that his passion truly resided in business and entrepreneurship, and more specifically drawn to events organizing. However, after college, as is normal for a lot of us, he got sucked into the rat race, which taxed and slowly killed his spirit over time. He lost his passion for drawing and making sketches over time. He felt unable to prioritize his big dreams and explore his deeply rooted passions, and this deepened his darkness. Now, we all know something about the darkness that is part of the human existence. Some of us more than others. But that was until Kyle's partner, her perseverance, and the ALEBRIJES saved him. And don't be mistaken, this was very much a slow and deliberate process over a number of years. And the journey of following our dreams by no means is an easy one. It is paved with even more barriers and sacrifices, as we hope to learn today from our guest, Mr. Kyle Mims. So how did I do, buddy? Is there anything that you would like to add before we get into it?
No, I mean, I really appreciate that. I think you hit it right on the head. It's been a wild road. It's been a road where life has kind of taken you by surprise every corner that you take, right? But it's also been very rewarding. I think I found a lot of purpose in the low times, which just kind of carried me forward. So I think you did a great job kind of introducing. I appreciate that. It's always different when you hear it back to yourself, right? But no, I appreciate the introduction. I think you got it.
Hell yeah. I appreciate you. Okay, so um let's get started. So why don't you begin by telling us the story of how you and I met?
Of course, man. So this it was definitely one of those I say burner if you're familiar with Burning Man, or like burner-esque regional burns and so forth. Definitely burner magic, as we like to kind of say, right?
Uh-huh.
We went to a wonderful regional burn called Love Burn in February. Super excited, my first time being there, and I walk into one of my old camps that I came with back in 2019. IMU is all made up Sky Bar, and just to see some familiar faces. And out of that, seeing talk who I met talking to one of my good friends was this wonderful individual here who's now leading this wonderful interview here. And it was funny because we had never met before, and I think it just kind of started at like a quip here, a joke there, a laugh there, and before you know it, like it was just like we were so entangled with each other's story and each other's energy. And I think that's the beautiful thing about being a part of this community. Just kind of finding genuine people wherever you go. People actually care about the things you have to say. And I appreciate you for from day one, from moment one, listening, intently listening, and wanting to know more about myself, want to know more about this project that we'll talk about a little bit later, and digging into the why, and the how, and I think that's a beautiful thing about you as an individual because you make people feel so comfortable to share that with you. And so I'm just very blessed to have met your acquaintance and been able to do that through laughter, joy, and warmth.
Brother, I love you. You know, I love you so much because one of the most important lessons I teach my students is don't forget about the why. The why is the most important question to ask as part of
Yes.
your learning journey. So for you to, mirror that back, reflect it as something that you perceive in me showing up in the world, whew, I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Um, so brother, as we delve into it a little bit deeper, can you tell us the story of your partner's brother being killed and how it brought Dia de los Muertes front and center of your creative exploration?
Sure, 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 sure. So I'll kind of start by saying, so my wife is a amazing force in my life, and we kind of like do literally everything together. And so, many moons ago, over 7 years ago, we were kind of planning on doing some events in the city and a festival. And I've always been interested in the Day of the Dead holiday. And not too long after that, we end up unfortunately got called home. She's from Mexico, and we got noticed that our brother-in-law had been shot and killed in Mexico. And so
Mm,
we made our way back home and had to fellowship and really kind of do some deep soul searching back home. And when we came back, it was such a heavy thing on us. And I think as a household, and I know her as an individual, trying to understand how to process loss, also process grief, and then her specifically being able to do that from so far away from home, away from family, away from friends, right?
mm,
And, we had already kind of been doing some movement work around the Day of the Dead holiday, which is solely focused on celebrating the lives of the loved ones who have passed on, right? And like working as a community, as a family, as a combined family, human race, to fellowship and celebrate their lives, and making sure that we understand that we're all dealing with these things on a day-to-day basis. Like we're as different as we all feel, we all can relate to losing someone that's very close to us. And so what it ended up happening is we end up having to kind of dive into those teachings and those practices to enable
mm,
to work through that. And I think we're all still working through that, right?
mm,
But it was just it was a kind of as a course correction. Like we need to kind of focus in on this because we started experiencing our own individual healing. And then through some of the work that we do through our nonprofit, Dia de los Muertos DC, we recognize that other people, when they get an opportunity to kind of share their stories, um, talk about what they're going through, talk about the lives and the teachings of their loved ones, it's healing, right? It's healing, and that's and so we kind of found healing in doing the work that we do, and that's hope that kind of answers the question. But that's kind of how it kind of started, and we've been on the road ever since.
Wow. Um, Tragedy can be an impetus or an catalyst for something so powerful that ends up being a source of light for everyone around us. So thank you
Yes.
for reminding us of a very important life lesson. In the interest of our audience members who might not have as much of a background, foundation, cultural context, um, could you spend a little bit of time elucidating, sort of the cultural tradition of Dia de los Muertes, um, and then Alebrijes,
Sure.
and how the two are connected with one another for our benefit, if
You
you
got it. It's my absolute pleasure to do so.
okay.
So, Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead, is a holiday that's celebrated between October 31st and November 2nd. Okay, so the first day you kind of come out, and you come out with your community, your families, to grieve and give thanks for the lives of the loved ones that you've lost. And so the first is really mostly spent because you start on like right before midnight on the 31st, and then you go into the November 1st, which is in celebration of the adults, and as you go into November 2nd is in celebration of the lives of the children who have passed on. And so typically, traditionally, how it's celebrated, I say it's a lot different than how we kind of process grief and how we kind of deal with loss in, I'll say, in America, per
Yeah,
se, where I'm from. Whereas, you go to a funeral, you go to a repast, and you'll grieve in silence, kind of with your intermediate family, and then time goes, and you just hope that this burden kind of just falls off your shoulders, right?
yeah,
I think the power of this holiday is that you're not doing it alone, right? You are literally going out with your intermediate family, with your neighbors, with the church folks, with your classmates, with your mailman. Everyone in the town is coming out in droves. They're lighting candles. They're creating altars with the photos of their loved ones. They're bringing belongings that were important to those loved ones in life, right? And they're actually making a journey and a trek to the cemetery. And like unlike most times when you kind of visualize a cemetery, it's very solemn. It's
mm,
very open and quiet, and not a lot of people there. But this time, you can imagine your entire city kind of all making the pilgrimage to the cemetery, food, music, just a matter of joy.
mm,
And so it's kind of a complete 360 to what, excuse me, 180 to what we kind of imagine the grieving process being. Because instead of you sitting, I mean, there are definitely tears shed, there's definitely pain felt, but I think the belief and the understanding is that you know during this time, during this holiday, this is the time where your loved ones, their souls are able to come back and actually fellowship with you. So while you're out there with your group, with your family, like they're with you, they're partaking in those foods that you brought to the altar. They're listening to the music that you curated just for them. And it's special, because a big portion of this is all about maintaining memory. As long as you have someone to remember you, you actually never leave this earth, because as we believe is energy is forever, right? And we just kind of transform from this physical form into our spiritual form. And making sure that stays center to everything that you do, it's powerful, right? Because you understand in doing so that you are continuously walking with your ancestors. You walk within their power. and they're energizing you to make the right decisions, right, to guide you through life. And it's just it's such a great feeling to experience because you don't feel as though you've truly lost, right? It's a continuation, and so that's pretty much the holiday overall, and it's just very important. So it's celebrated in Mexico. It's celebrated throughout Latin America. It's actually
Mm,
celebrated throughout the world, and it's something that we especially like to share because we think that it's a lot of power in the traditions, right? Um, and from my perspective, just like I said, being a native Washingtonian
mm,
from the U.S., it's always been very difficult to understand and talk around loss, right? We
mm,
experience it every day, but typically when you lose someone, like your family doesn't talk about it. It's very quiet. If you, especially as a male, if you're showing emotions and you're crying, you're really carrying something heavy on you, you look down upon because it looks like as weakness because you're actually emoting. So you kind of get forced into this society that tells you that you just kind of need to bottle it up, and that leads to a lot of different things. It leads to depression, it leads to alcoholism, it leads to drug abuse, drug addiction, it leads to domestic violence, and all these other ways that these things that we carry every single day that are so heavy, they need a place to go, right?
mm.
And we're not taught in our society to release. It's just as of maybe the last 5 years that mental health has really been a really big headline in the news and the media and so forth. So it's just really important that we focus on these things because if we're able to unpack them, we're able to process these things together and help each other through it. It's different when one thing I'll say, and hopefully I'm not going off on too much big of a tangent here.
Man,
Um,
keep going.
okay,
Tangents are magical. Okay.
okay, perfect. So like I said, we do a lot of work in the community, and so we've done some community discussions. And
Mhm,
so you walk into a group of 30 people, and they're all strangers, right?
mhm,
And within, by the time you leave there, like you're looking across the room, and you're like, oh, that's my sister, that's my brother, because
mm,
you start hearing someone's story, and you're like, wow, like I really thought I was the only one going through that. Like we go through life thinking we're the only ones carrying so much, and that it's impossible to carry by yourself. And so when you start speaking it, you start communicating, you realize that there's so many other people dealing with some like similar things that you are, and that they can either give you guidance or you guys can work together to kind of persevere and work through that, and you build community that way, and those are lifelong bonds at that particular point. So that's powerful, right? And
hell
so
yeah.
to, so to transition that into Alabrijes, so if you go back into kind of like history and how Alabrijes even came about, they are pretty much a dream of a famous Mexican artist who actually one day dreamt these fantastical creatures that are basically combinations of very different elements, very different animals, and they're really beautiful and vibrant. And when he woke up, he actually woke up screaming "Alabrijes, Alabrijes." Never heard the word before. Like he woke up screaming it, and what he channeled was like these were like spirit representations of spirit guides, right? And so the common belief that these spirit guides are guiding you in life as well as in death, right? So as you kind of go through life, you're trying to figure out which way to go. You're trying to figure out like why this is not working for you, and somehow it just all kind of works out. The belief is like you have an alabrije kind of guiding you through that, right? And then when you pass and your soul has to make its way to the afterlife, um, these fantastical creatures are the ones that are kind of there to kind of illuminate the way to get you there, safely. And so it was just a really beautiful connection there. And what we are setting out to do in our project, which we'll talk about,
Mm,
is to communicate that healing, right? To communicate that unity within humanity, right? We have a saying that if we're all the same in death, we all must be the same in life, right?
yeah.
Communicate that in a way that folks who come from all over the world, like when they come to a place crazy place like Burning Man, or they come to a crazy place like DC, or another country, and all coming together in one place. You start recognizing like we have so many things we focus on our differences, but we are one people, and we want to kind of basically package that in a way that we're showing we're kind of showing people that similarity, showing people that unity, and being able to come together and do that through art and music. So
Yeah, we are one people, and sort of, um, death is a great way of reminding us of that and the grieving process. Thank you for sharing that in that way. Um, so I I'd really love for you to recount your magical, mystical experience related to sort of the first Dia de los Muertes benefit that you were a part of leading and organizing. So paint us a picture of the context, and then please tell us the story of the experience you had with your deceased friend's family member.
sure, sure. So again, 7 years ago, it doesn't seem that long ago, but time has definitely flown. Again, my wife and I, we set out, we wanted to do an event, and there's a lot of things going on. So we talked about kind of like the death of our brother-in-law, but
Yeah.
also we were also dealing with is, around the time of our first festival, um, it was the earthquakes in Mexico that happened, and also Hurricane Maria. And so we set out to do this for-profit event, and quickly realized, like, my wife was like, "There's no way we can do this for-profit event while there's so many people out here suffering, right?" And so we need to kind of do a benefit to raise money to kind of help those causes. And so that's kind of where it all kind of came together. And so we kind of put a call out to the community: "Hey, we need a venue," and we got provided a venue. "Hey, we need artists to come out," and artists came out and volunteered their time, their talents, their skills, and it was small. It was out of a pop-up shop, and it kind of became the base for a lot of great things that we'll talk about later. But this was the very first time that I actually had a chance to kind of celebrate the holiday as a native-born American, right? And so it was like I didn't recognize the power before this day, and I think that's what we're talking about here. So we went through the entire event. Of course, like any event that ever happens, nothing is going right. You're trying to manage volunteers, and people aren't showing up at the times they're supposed to show up on.
It's a zoo.
Of course, exactly. And I'm stressed out, and I'm one of those people who wears all emotions on my face in the time of crisis, when it comes to events, at least. And it was crazy. And so we got to the point of the night where we actually had set aside for people to kind of form a circle, and just open up a safe space for folks to share, stories about their loved ones. If they just wanted to say a name, if they wanted to light a candle, just a space for folks to just be able to reflect and just have that ability to do so. And it's funny because leading up to this point in my brain, I knew that I wanted to speak at this point, right? Because in college,
Yeah.
I lost one of my best friends, two of my best friends actually, in college, and I knew I wanted to kind of give them, just wanted to kind of give light to their story, their lives, right, and their memory. And of course, like any event planner, I'm the guy who's trying to do everything, and sound's not working, and all this kind of jazz. And so, unfortunately, it just didn't seem to come together. That I missed the opportunity. And the craziest thing happened right after that. So this segment ended, and within minutes of the segment ending, and I'm fooling with the speaker in the back of the room, in walks the mother and the sister of one of my very close childhood friends who had passed away. His name is Justin Holman, and I hadn't seen his family since his homegoing services, and so of course, I drop everything that I'm doing and I go greet them at the door, and I go to hug his sister, and then I turn and I go to hug his mother, And at this point, this overwhelming presence just consumed my body. Like when I embraced her, I felt him hugging me through her.
Mm,
And I had never experienced anything in my life like that, to a point where instantly I had to release her and like kind of like excuse myself and jet out the building to where it was like pouring down thunderstorms outside because I was bawling, like the full release of emotions uncontrollably. And I do not cry. If anybody knows me, I'm not a crier. And but I couldn't stop it, right? And in tow is my wife right behind me.
mm,
She's like, "What's going on? What's going on? What's going on?" It's like I can't explain it to you. Like I feel him. I felt him, you know. And at that very moment, I recognized the true power of this holiday, right? Like I had a personal experience that validated the fact that like my loved one was with me on this day. You know, they were shoulder to shoulder. They were able to reach out and touch me on through this celebration. And it was just so much power in that. Like, and it gives me goosebumps to this day. Like I try to catch myself so I didn't choke up
mm,
in telling that story. Um, and so, you know, we just at that moment, this became not a one-time event or one-time celebration. It became something that we had to share with our community and even the world. You know, our goal right now as a nonprofit is to make Dia de los Muertos a national holiday. That's one of our initiatives that we're trying to push forth, and
mm,
talking to Congress people to kind of get that done because of the power, you know, and to kind of show this country that it's okay to emote, it's okay to be raw, it's okay to hurt. It's no shame in it, right? And there's power in each other that we can draw from to get through these hard times. And the
mm.
only way we're going to get through them is if we do it together, and we're working towards kind of showcasing that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, brother. You know, I believe that there are two kinds of people in this world: those who believe in the things that the mind cannot explain, and those who feel compelled to dismiss whatever their mind cannot explain. And I count myself in the former. And I believe that spirituality is very much rooted in a realm that is way beyond. It includes, the mind, but it's also way beyond that. And I really appreciate you for sharing what you did, because I think it serves as a great reminder to those of us who are very strongly rooted in the mind, but have this quiet voice that wonders, is there more? Is there more? Is this all? Is there more? I'm here to tell you that if you are open, if you can cultivate the courage to start thinking outside the limitations of your mind, through, spiritual experiences of other people that you trust, that you've cultivated trust with, well, then that could be one way that you could expand your horizon and serve to look beyond, you know, the faculties of your mind to more deeply root into yourself as a spiritual being. So I'm very grateful to you for sharing that, brother. Um, so let's shift gears a bit
Sure.
and talk about Burning Man.
Okay.
Um, Burning Man is something that, when I bring up in conversations, is something that um, either a lot of people haven't heard of, depending on the circle, or a lot of people have just heard of and have certain preconceived notions about. But what I'm most interested in hearing from you is, what is your perception of Burning Man? And also, what has your experience been with the whole scene as a, person of color?
Hmm. Okay. Um, so I will say that for folks who've never heard of Burning Man, um, I'll give the kind of generic
Yeah,
explanation of what it is first, right? So how it's typically described, it is a annual gathering slash ecosystem of free thinkers and creatives that kind of come together in the middle of the desert during the harshest conditions to basically just to kind of create a temporary city that's only alive for 1 week, that is full of anything that your mind can imagine and your hands feel compelled to put together, right? It's a beautiful place. If you ever have a chance to experience where all these different people from all over the globe come, they create, they fellowship, um, and you know, and it's almost mind bending, right? We watch a lot of these cool shows on on television, or like these animated shorts and stuff like that, and then you just imagine like transplanting, which your vision is there, like moving into the Spider Verse or something like that, right? And then like transplanting that into a real life situation, you're like, how is any of this possible, right? And
yeah,
how all these people come together to make this possible. So that's kind of the high level of Burning Man. If and I say that to the fact that anyone who the founders would kill me, or any of us where we would ever list it as a festival, because it's not really a festival. It's definitely more than a festival, but it is a place where you gather to experience art, you experience music, and in many ways you experience healing.
yeah,
It's funny, the parallels, of stuff we're talking about with like Dia de los Muertos, because at Burning Man there's a temple, right, where
mhm,
folks gather and like come and post pictures and leave messages for their loved ones that have passed on, and pay tribute and pray and just meditate or just hold space in silence. And there's just so much energy that goes into that particular space. And it's also a beauty because the space of where it takes place, it's on native land. There's so much energy and power in the land itself, and it's a lot of history. And so all of that just kind of just reverberates off of all of our individual energies. And a lot of times it's 75 to 80,000 people that come out every year. So we're at this time of year. This man-made city that's only alive for a week is this. I think it's the second largest city in Nevada.
yeah.
That's gone. Almost a week after. It's really kind of mind blowing, and it just teaches you that nothing is permanent. Everything is temporary. Enjoy what you can, when you can, how you can. Don't take anything for granted, and just live your life in the present. And that's why Burning Man, the element of it is there are many pieces of art, including the man sculpture, the temple, that get burned every year. So this mind-blowing piece that you've never seen before and can't even conceptualize how it even became into existence is gone within a couple of days to never be seen again. And it just teaches you a lot about life. It's really powerful, right? And so to rewind about how I kind of got introduced into the scene.
Yeah.
Again, gotta always ping my wife because she's the one who pushes me into uncomfortable places, right?
Mm,
Which I appreciate. And so at the end of 2018, we had just finished our festival in November, and she had actually let me know about a unofficial regional burn, called Catharsis on the Mall. Yep, which is a visual for healing. Go ahead.
yeah, I was just trying to interrupt and bring up the fact that Catharsis on the Mall was a Burning Man event as well, but I didn't realize you were getting to it. I apologize. Please continue.
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. So again, it's unofficial. It was an unofficial Burning Man event, but all the same principles, right? Burning Man is made up of 10 principles,
Yeah.
self-reliance, radical self-inclusion, and
Look
all
them
those other
up.
beautiful things. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's because again, the idea of Burning Man is to kind of create this utopia, right, where like all these different people can kind of like coincide and exist in this framework where we always are gifting, we're always giving. It's not focused on a transactional experience, and it's all about uplifting the person next to you, right?
Yeah.
And also doing that while also taking care of the earth, because you're not supposed to. It's all about not like zero trace,
Yep.
which is also a beautiful concept, especially in the world that we're living in, and all the stuff with climate change and you know uh, all the killer whales attacking boats and wildfires and earthquakes and everything else that's happening every day that we're dealing with now. So anyway, so going back to catharsis, she let me know, have you ever heard of this thing called catharsis? I'm like, no, never heard about this. She's like, well, there's this really cool event that takes place on the National Mall, and it's a visual for healing, and I really think we should participate or reach out to them. I'm like, okay, cool. And then she comes back a couple weeks later. So I've done a little research, and I only do I think we should participate. I think we should do a theme camp. We should do an application, do a theme camp. And I'm like, I know I'm not a burner at this time. And I'm like, what the hell is a theme camp? And she's like, oh, it's like Burning Man. I'm like, I don't know what Burning Man is. But she's like, okay, look it up, YouTube it, right? And so, of course, I hop on and I start looking up theme camps, look up Burning Man, and my eyes just go wide. I'm like, wow. I'm seeing all
Mind
the
blown,
lights,
baby.
lights blown, right? You see all these lights and these giant 50-foot sculptures in the middle of the desert and people riding bikes and like it's just like Mad
Hell
Max on
yeah.
steroids, but beautiful and like really curated really well. And it's like, what the hell's going on? And I start looking out, I'm like, okay, like I think I could do this, right? And so we set out to build a theme camp. And so what we do, the plan was to create a Mexican plaza, on the National Mall, which was complete with a 30-foot cathedral facade that I built in my backyard. We had storefronts that kind of represent like small tiendas, like little stores that would kind of neighbor the plaza, and then we had a center stage where we just really kind of pumped out Latin music, African American ethnic sounds and so forth, which is really, really beautiful. And really one of the first times they actually had a lot of that brought out to the mall in this container. And so, and it was a crazy undertaking, and but it was really well worth it. But I say that to say this is when I knew that we were on to something powerful.
Yeah.
We entered a powerful community because we set out, we put an application in literally like maybe a month before it was time to be out there. They had a mixer they planned at one of the local establishments here. And from the very time we stepped foot in the door, they were like, "Oh, you guys are Dia los Muertos? Wow, like we really enjoy your project X, Y, and Z." And it was like, "How can we help? What do you need? What resources do you need? Like, who can I call?" Like from day one, and we just were just brought into this really warm and enriching group of people who just, in my life, this is probably one of the first times I ever experienced a group, especially in DC, I'll say, where everything is very transactional,
Mm.
that people just genuinely wanted to see you succeed, wanted to see your dreams become real, and were willing to put their physical, emotional selves out there to support you in any and every way possible. We're out there, people just walk by, you need help? Like was just polarizing in many effects. And so and what it taught us is that like there were folks out here um, who weren't out for themselves. They weren't out to. There wasn't a crab in a barrel mentality. Like if your art piece is bigger than my art piece, I got to figure out how I'm going to sabotage you, right? Like, or
Yeah.
if we're all trying to figure out where we're going to get resources. Like if I put you onto a grant, that means that's one less grant out of my pocket. So I'm going to block you. You know, um,
Yeah.
and it was just such a weird thing coming, just being in like the traditional default world, not really understanding that, because it seems like everywhere you go in our regular lives, there's always someone trying to block you or trying to stand in your way, or needing something in exchange for you to kind of get to the next step. Um, and just to kind of be surrounded by so much love, um, calling us in was amazing. And that's actually how we got invited that same year to go to Burning Man for the first time, because we'd done this crazy installation on the National Mall, and blood sweat almost died a few times, you know.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, if like guys, like, you guys are already out there, you just need to go. And we went, and we've been bitten by the bug, and I don't know if we'll ever not go at this particular point.
Yeah. Wow. um. So then, what I'd love to hear is, at your first Burning Man experience, right? Um, what was your um experience as a person of color, as far as like, what you saw, um and then sort of how that potentially tied into inspiration, amongst other things, right? Of the art cars, specifically the Alebrijes art cars.
For sure. So, as I mentioned, the first time we actually got to Burning Man proper was in 2019, and it was just a mind blowing experience from the day we stepped out in the dust. Because of course we went a week early for Build Week, so we got a chance to kind of see the city kind of come to life, and then get a chance to also experience the actual
Yeah,
event week, after that. Um, so, originally, we had already kind of heard the grumblings of, like, you just got to be mindful, really kind of like, be aware of your space, set your boundaries, and like, just, it's going to be overwhelming, right? If you're a person of color, typically, just like any group, I think any group of ethnic group, I would say, I
yeah,
feel like you grow up around people who look like you. Right, you fellowship most of the time with people who look like you. Maybe until you get to maybe like high school or college, where you'll start kind of mixing, and it might be a little bit more open. But being going to Burning Man, where it's 75,000 to 80,000 people, and maybe less than 3% of those people identify as people of color, it's like polarizing. Like, to kind of recognize, like, wow, like, I'm
what are
going to.
those odds again, or what's that percentage again?
Sure. So, like, it's less than 3% of people who go identify as people of color. Yeah. And so, you're like, wow, I've never been in that kind of space like that. Well, I'm so outnumbered. I'm so out of my comfort zone. I've never been this kind of extreme camping before. I've never been this far away from home for this long a period of time, away from the folks that make me feel safe before. And so a lot of people who go out, especially people of color, have to kind of check in with themselves and kind of prepare themselves, like, okay, like, I need to kind of like be okay being me, and be okay not being in, I won't say, like, I'll be in unfamiliar spaces, right? So what I will speak to is, even with those numbers, me personally, um, because of the amount of love and care and purposeful interactions that I experienced going out there, um, I necessarily didn't feel like everyone was looking at me like I was the black sheep, or anything of
Like you
that
didn't
nature.
belong.
Right, exactly. It was very welcoming. It was like, oh my gosh, like, how you doing? So nice to meet you. What are you doing here? What are you looking to? What are your interests? What are your loves?
Yeah,
Like, how can we help? Just all this positivity, right?
yeah,
But again, it can be a lot. It can definitely be a lot. Now, we did have experience. At one point, one of our close friends, she worked as an employee of the org, doing like DPW work, and there was a party. Well, actually, it was an event, a special event that was solely for, like, DPW and their friends to kind of come out. And it was like a little pop-up shop, and you can go in and you can like trade, garments and grab clothes and stuff like that.
Mm,
But it was kind of like invite only kind of situation. And
mm,
so we ride our bikes. We're excited for the event. Been having a great time thus far. And we pull up, and from the time we stepped in line,
mhm.
the one of the main people who was kind of like, I guess, manning the line,
Uh-huh.
was just like staring us the entire time, right? And so
Huh.
we're like, okay, like to a point where we're just
Yeah.
uncomfortable. And so then, and again, we're like maybe like 25th in line, of a line of like 30 people, 35 people. And like then out of the blue, he walks to us and like, hey, you guys got tickets? And we're like, you didn't mind asking anybody else in this line for tickets? Like, what's the deal? And she's like, well, actually, yes, I actually am a employee, blah, 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 blah. But so that was kind of like the start. And then we walked into this establishment, because we were already feeling weird from that interaction.
Yeah.
And like the entire time it goes right, you get thrown back into your home life where you walk into a store and you just every aisle you walk down, you just feel eyes kind of watching, like you want to steal something. It's like everything in here is free. So like,
Yeah.
what am I able to steal, and why are you guys hawk eyeing me like I'm gonna do something wrong or I don't belong, right? And so that was a very, very uncomfortable experience. But that was one of the only experiences that we had that was kind of off like that, and that's probably why it stood out so much. And so not too long after that, like a day or so after, there was actually organized march that was planned,
Mm,
that was centered around um, broaching conversation about radical inclusion, right? And
yeah.
how at 80,000 people, why are we only at 3%, right? And like,
Yeah.
understanding what those barriers are for people of color to kind of get in, whether that's, culturally, whether they know about the event, whether they can afford to go to the event, whether there are programs that, or like art programs. We have so much talent to kind of share and so forth that are available, and kind of and it's kind of creating that bridge. And so the idea was that this march would take place about radical inclusion, and it was done in the hopes that we would get a chance to sit at the table with one or two of the founders and just say, hey guys, like, we're here, we're all people of color. We love this place that we're all out here, experiencing, and we want to share it with our communities. But there is work that needs to be done to bring us out here, and to like spread the word, and make it feel safe for us to kind of be out here, and unfortunately, we weren't able to get the ear of the founders at that particular point, which was very, very, very sad at that time. um, but that was it. But I will say it set a tone, right? It set a tone that, hey, there this is being looked at. There's a community that deems this important. This needs to be a priority. And actually, not too long after that initiative, the ride program and different other things like that came about to kind of help in radical inclusion and diversity and stuff, to kind of bridge a gap and create a bridge for minorities and people of color to kind of be out and bring art and contribute to this beautiful ecosystem. So that took place, and then the very next thing that we got a chance to experience, my wife runs over and she's like, hey, like, I don't care what we're doing today, but at like this time on this day, we gotta drop everything and we gotta go out because they're doing a BIPOC group photograph, in the middle of the dust, and like, I mean, I've been there for like probably 12 days at that point, maybe saw maybe like 8 people of color in my entire time being out
Wow.
there, right? So like to kind of have a experience that, oh wow, this about to be a group photo and we're all kind of gathering, was like a really, monumental
Big
thing. Like,
deal.
yeah, so we rush out there and you can just see like just this sea of people just coming and like gathering, and like automatically you just feel at home. It's funny, like all the people are strangers, but you just automatically just feel at home because you're around people who think, breathe, look like you, X, Y, and Z, and you just have so many like cultural similarities, and it was just powerful. And so we took this group photo, and after the photo, we got a chance to meet the photographer, um, who orchestrated the entire thing, and her name is Erin Douglas, and
Mm.
she's actually the founder of the Black Burner Project, and so every year, she's been going out for about 5 years now, and quickly, like us, realized that there wasn't many of us out there, and so decided that she was going to start documenting, the stories and the our photographs and portraits and our presence out there, which is really really powerful. And if you have a chance to check out her IG Black Burner Project, you see a lot of amazing photographs kind of capturing us out there in the dust, and so that we kind of formed a connection, and then later on, the missus, and she kind of followed up, and you know, that was beautiful because what it did was it planted a seed, right? We knew that there was importance, um, to be out there, to feel included, to showcase, and so that was 2019. Of course, COVID happened, so 20 didn't happen, 21 didn't happen. Well, I think we had a renegade in 21, right? And then and then on to 22, we get a call from Erin, and she's letting us know that, like, hey, like, she's been kind of called to put together an art piece, like, she's been trying to, promote, kind of like create this bridge. And like literally since she started, people see her images on Instagram and they're reaching out to her like, hey, like, what does it feel like to be a person of color out at Burning Man? What's this all about? Is this safe? All the things, the frequently asked questions that that people
Mm.
would think to ask, people of color. She's getting a barrage of these messages. Anyway, so the
Mm.
point was, so she was like, well, I've been asked to kind of create a project, like create an art piece. And she's like, but I'm a photographer, and so I'm not really, I don't know how to create this art piece. And so she started pulling together this ragtag team of folks to kind of make this a reality. And she had this amazing vision to create these 30-foot, photographic, portraits of Black burners out there that you can actually kind of come in, and there was an infrastructure in the middle that you could climb, and there was an audio loop that had like the stories of people's Burning Man experience, really unique experiences, kind of
Mm.
playing on a loop. And so, make a long story short, I was asked to be one of her build leads for that project, right?
Mm.
And then during that process, which was a very rewarding process last year, because it seemed crazy that it was going to be able to happen, but it did, and we met so many different people, so many amazing teammates throughout the process, and like actually. The other build lead for the project, Zulu Heru, this year is also bringing out a project that I'll talk about a little bit later too this year. But through that, through all of that, we got a chance to um, really spotlight the need, for folks to recognize our presence. Like, imagine, riding your bike and like being faced, standing at the torso of this giant, African American king, just in the
Mm.
middle of the dust, right? This is just crazy. And then we got a chance to. She actually did her group photo in front of the piece, and so last year I think we had like 450 people who came out to that photograph, right? And it was so much power in that. And so, all that to say, it was that was an experience, and that was something that I knew that I wanted to feel more of. I didn't want that to just be a day or a couple hour experience, right? It needed to be something that was ever present, for all those to experience. And since we started going out in 2019, I knew I wanted to bring something to Burning Man. The idea was we did this Day of the Dead theme camp at Catharsis in the National Mall, that we wanted to do the same thing, bring it out bigger and better to the dust, right?
Mm.
And then that turned into like, okay, well, like a theme camp is beautiful, but like the impact that we wanted to have for the community, unless you just happen to be going down that block at that time, happen to hear a song that you like and pulled over, you would never know we existed because there's
Hell yeah.
2,700 theme camps that are super impactful and super exciting and super engaging. And so we were like, well, that's not going to work for us.
We got a lot of ground to cover as
Got a whole
POCs,
lot of
baby.
ground, right? And then it was like, for me, like I said, I'm out there every year for 2 weeks, and so it's like I love the music. I don't know. Well, I love the art. I love the space. I love the energy. I know I want to be there, but I'm always like, where's my music? Like I have no disrespect to techno, house, anything like that. Like it's beautiful. I can vibe to it. But at 2 weeks, I'm at my techno end, bro. Like I'm I'm all the way out of it. I'm like, where am I
No
from?
offense.
Because I love it. I think it's a great genre of music. But like where's my R&B? Where are my drums? Where are my vocals? Where's the jazz? Where's the Latin, the salsa? Where's the merengue? Where's all these other elements that never get played, right? Like it's for me at least. Like you go to the east side of Playa and you hear a sound. You go to west side of Playa, you hear a similar sound. You go to south side, you probably heard the same sound by the third time you're there. And so it was like, okay, and for that reason, I want to create a place that we could bring our culture, you know, out to the dust, right?
Mhm.
Through music and through art and through all these different things, through dance, performances. And so we're like, okay, we're gonna do a sound stage, right? Let's do a sound stage. And then we recognize the same thing we talked about the theme camp is the fact that like I was literally riding around and I went all around the playa last year and I was like, I thought I had seen everything like in terms of sound stages I could see. And then probably one of
Mhm.
the last days I found myself stumbling upon some sound stage kind of back in a nook. And I'm like, wait a minute, it's the same issue. Unless you stumble upon that and unless that everything just kind of aligns, like, it's only the people who just happen to see you
Mhm.
experience. And so then we're like, okay, no, we got to take the show on a road, right? We got to be able to bring it everywhere. And so that's where the idea was like, we got to do an art car, you know. And for those of you who don't know what an art car is or a mutant vehicle, it is literally a vehicle that is created into this massive piece of art where the base vehicle is virtually unrecognizable, and usually it has, well, all the time it has some crazy, lights and music and doing some weird abstract things that's kind of mind blowing. Maybe might be blowing fire or something like that. So
Mhm.
it's just really
Like
kind
a
of
pitch
crazy
dark
thing.
night.
Yes, yes. Like if you could imagine, Burning Man at Night is basically like Vegas on like the utmost of steroids. And it's really beautiful. It's magical. It literally looks like a fairy tale or a dream. But anyway, so the idea was that we wanted to do an art car and
Yeah.
do that around showcasing, black, brown, native voice and sound cultures, performance, and share that because honestly doing the project that Aaron brought last year that we brought last year was called Black Ashe. I would say I think we were all very nervous about how it was going to be received,
Mm.
by the greater community. And I will say that, I mean, if you have, of course, like anything, you're always going to have a few people who are going to have, kind of show their ignorance and everything else around it. But I mean, I would say 90% of the people that I had a communication with was so amazed about it. We're just like, oh my gosh, thank you all for bringing this out here. We needed this. We've been asking for this X, Y, and Z. And so it's just really like, it was humbling and it was really rewarding to see the reaction. And I guess that does speak to the beauty of Burning Man because again, even though these numbers are so out there in terms of percentages, like the majority of the folks are open. They do want to see that inclusion happen, and they
Yeah.
are welcoming and they are loving and they're not divisive. And
Yeah.
so that's a beautiful thing.
Thank you, brother. I am a little mindful of our time, but I do want to quickly cover and get your sort of insight into one last thing. So earlier at the beginning of the episode, I mentioned how, you know, as part of living our purpose in a way where we feel more deeply tapped into, joy and following our dreams, there's a process of first exploring so that we might discover our talents and what truly speaks to us and how we can contribute in a way that's just apart from the norm, right? And then once we discover that, then begins the painstaking work, and oftentimes that work is fraught with barriers and obstacles, and is just more work in the work of life. Okay, it's just more work in the work of life. You got a job, you got a family, you know, and you're piling this on, but it's your life's work. So help us understand, what was the biggest struggle that you encountered in this particular journey with the Alebrijes? um yeah, just enlighten us on the biggest struggle that you faced. We don't have to talk about how you overcome it, just, because we know you're gonna persevere. You ain't stopping, but what has been the biggest struggle?
Yeah. So, with this project in particular, I would definitely say I think the biggest struggle has really just been life. And what I mean by that is, we set out from the beginning. We had this amazing idea, and to create these art cars. We have four art cars that we're setting out to build. I know one will definitely be out at Playa this year, and I think we'll continue. We won't think we would definitely be continuing to get the other three up and running for everyone to experience. Um, but we had this vision of how all these vehicles kind of came together and kind of worked together, and we had this team, this amazing team that we'd kind of amassed from our experience at Burning Man, from our experience with Dia Los Muertos, through our personal experience, our personal friendships. And, this was the team that, we could take over the world with, and it just seemed like, throughout from the beginning, everyone was so amped for the project. And as we continued, life started lifing, man, and like people just kind of have to drop off, and that was difficult. It was difficult for a couple of reasons. I think as an individual, you have to be understanding because like, we can never predict what's coming down the pipeline for any one of us, right? And it could be health, it could be family, it could be job, it could be a series of other things. And so kind of balancing the understanding that like these individuals around here want to do these things, right? They want to participate, they want to contribute. But at the same time, they also have to give space to the fact that they're human. They have lives, they have families that they have to take care of. And they have to balance that. And so and and there's no shame in that, right? I think that's one of the hardest things you deal with because it's a constant pull when you do any project like this. It's a constant balance. It's like, cool, well, if I'm at home with my family today doing the dad thing, then like who's in the shop? Like who's welding, like who's picking up material, or if I'm doing that, who's running logistics or project management or trying to fundraise and do all these different layers of this sole project, who's doing it, right? And I think the hardest thing is trying to find a balance where you can be 100% in all places, right?
Mhm.
Doing the impossible, like so I think that's a constant struggle because you're constantly at the risk of facing burnout. You're constantly looking for funds. You're constantly looking for energy. You're constantly looking for just continued motivation because after a while you hit enough roadblocks. Like you start your head starts weighing on you. You know, you're like, oh man, this might not happen. Oh man, this might have been a bad idea. You start throwing out, tens of $1,000s of your personal funds. You're like, oh shoot, like, I could definitely be paying off some bills, or I could definitely be looking at, doing some things for the family and setting some things up for the future. And you have to kind of keep checking yourself that I'm on the right path. You keep reminding yourself, why am I on the path? Right? Why is it important? What's the outcome? What is going to be the benefit when we kind of get through this? And so I think that's a big struggle, because I know for myself and personally, my analogy for myself, I'm a train. Okay. So like I'm very passionate. So like as soon as I got the idea, I'm rolling. I'm rolling. I'm rolling. I'm rolling.
And you
And
ain't
but
stopping, baby.
I'm not stopping. But you get enough things that that fall into the tracks,
Yeah.
like that slow you down. It's hard to keep pushing. It's hard to kind of re-energize and kind of reach that same momentum that you kind of started off with. I think that we all deal with that as human beings, as artists, as creatives, and I think that's everyone's struggle. And my wife and I were talking about this yesterday. For some reason, it seems like the last, maybe it's the tail end of COVID, and like folks kind of having to spend so many years by themselves and dealing with their
Mhm.
own trauma and their own things. Like people are carrying a lot, man. And that's why I think last year, everyone will tell you last year was a hard burn. I mean, it was definitely hot. It was definitely windstorms and everything, and dust storms and so forth. But it's just emotionally draining. People are just trying to come out of themselves, and we find that bleeding into this project, right? And people having to kind of pull it out of themselves to even show up for something that they want to show up for, you know. And so I think we deal with that. I think it's a balance, and you want the most, and you'll get the most eventually, but you have to be truthful to yourself. You have to own what your capacities are, and you have to be okay with maybe saying no or stepping back, right? Um, and the folks who have to pick up the slack also have to be okay with you doing that, and they have to be understanding. And because we're all family, right? And it's not going to help anybody for us to burn everybody down in the process of something amazing. So
Mhm.
that's been a struggle. I would say just I find myself like I'm the only one in this warehouse today. How many days left on this calendar? Holy crap! But we have a lot of great help, a lot of great support, and just happy to be about it. And and I'm not sure this is the last question for you. I did want to just quickly just kind of let people know what the project actually is, really quickly. If that's okay.
Go
Um,
for it.
okay, so ALEBRIJES Art Car Experience, right? So what is this? So basically, it is this
Do I have to
initiative.
put you on a timer?
You don't. You don't. I'm gonna make it
Okay.
really succinct. It's gonna be on it. Okay. So basically, we're setting out to create in total, once we finally get done all the project, 4 art cars. There's a wolf. There's a owl. There is a lion, and there is a turtle, and they all represent the 4 elements. So you got air, water, fire, as well as earth. Right. And there's a lot of spiritual elements that kind of come into the background and the understanding behind that. And so the idea again is these spirit guides, when you get a chance to run up on one, board one, ride one, party around one, the idea is that these spirit guides are kind of guiding you to that safe space where you can feel free to, remember your loved ones. We're working to have, healing exercises and meditations and sound baths, along with music and along with dance performances, along with live vocals, different things that you're not typically accustomed to kind of seeing,
Mhm.
and kind of showcasing the cultures of, like, black, brown, native folks. So you get that on the outside, and the outside is ornated with Aztec prints and patterns, and bright colors and lights, and then also with like projectors that are kind of mapping the ground around you, to kind of like transport you to these different environments, that they kind of get you into the realm of the Alebrijes, right? And then on the inside, there's actually 2 floors in each vehicle where you get a chance to kind of go into and you get through all different vehicles. You get a chance to go through the journey through the Miklan. And the Miglan basically is an Aztec belief that after you pass on, your soul has to go through 9 levels and obstacles to kind of reach the afterlife. And so the idea is you'll go through these different floors and kind of experience some of those levels and environments and obstacles as individuals, right? And then the idea is that when you come out on final exit, after you get through the 4th vehicle, the 9th level is when you meet the gods of the afterlife. So you get a chance to meet them, and then you're kind of released into this span, this new realm, kind of reborn, and then you get a chance to experience the outside of the car, and when they form and they kind of come together, they kind of form this amphitheater where we're kind of pumping sound and energy, and we're passing out instruments for folks to kind of sound to sesh, the jam sesh with, and just again create our own container where folks can come together and feel welcome and feel a part, right? And so we're really excited to be bringing this to you again this year. With funding and time, we're really confident that we're going to have one beautiful, amazing car for you all to experience this year. And the idea is that they'll debut at Burning Man, and then we'll make the trek back across to the East Coast, and we'll be activating, throughout the DMV area, Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, and then take it on a tour throughout the country. So we do, please follow along, the project, donate if you can. If you can't donate some time, donate your hands, your energy, or just your good love and grace towards the project. And we hope you get a chance to experience it in person. We're looking forward to sharing it with you. So
thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presence and your time and your authenticity, and just sharing such deep aspects of the work of your dreams. And yeah, and in conclusion, I just want to say that outsized growth in life only happens when you wake up to the fact that your choices control your physical and mental reality. Time and time again, we see the human spirit transcend suffering and life limitations and situations. And so many of us are caught up in the daily grind and consumerist lifestyle. But irrespective of your situation, you have the power to make small changes, however small changes, which over time add up towards changing your destiny. Kyle is one wonderful example of someone who was caught in the corporate rat race, despite having such big dreams and ambitions all through college. And it took a while. It took a long while. And I'm sure he paid a heavy price. And I am so grateful to him for sharing about the roller coaster of his life, including his darkness, and how the ALEBRIJES, as well as his partner, let's not forget about his partner, saved him. So thank you to you all and Kyle for your presence. And until the next episode, I bid you love and light.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Get Out of Your Comfort Zone series. I hope it moved you and inspired you if you are feeling stuck with something in your life. If you would like to further connect with our guest, please see their contact in the description. Please consider taking a moment to rate this podcast. Please also consider showing us some love on your Instagram story. You can find our info in the episode description. Until the next episode, I wish you infinite love and light. Thank you so much for tuning in.